Anders Ohlsson is here. He's going to take a seat, the seat of glory over there in either you could do stereo if you want both, but let me. Oh, and I have to remember. That's not microphone too. Say something.
Good morning.
There he is.
Hey, how's it going?
People recognize that voice from so many online events from the past.
Just a few.
Let me just get one more thing up
what's
here.
What's going on?
Huh?
My
Jim's screen was going haywire.
Uh-oh.
My virtual machine just rebooted and
Wow. All
focused
right.
on the screen.
Okay, so let me hit this, and it's all recording. And Anders is here in the studio. This is Anders Ohlsson, Technical Product Manager at WideOrbit Traffic, Radio. So why don't you tell people?
So WideOrbit Traffic is our one of our core products.
Okay.
It's how WideOrbit started. They tried writing in C++ and Visual Basic, and then quickly moved over to Delphi. So it's been Delphi for pretty much 15 years. WideOrbit Traffic has. And WideOrbit Network was spun off from WideOrbit Traffic when we realized that the cable networks have a lot more different requirements in addition to regular broadcasters for TV and radio. So WideOrbit Network was created probably about 4 to 5 years ago, something like that. And I put Valentine's Eve there just for fun because Friday the 13th sounds so scary.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, others were noting that. Well, the other thing is tomorrow, February 14th, 2015, is the 20 years since the launch at Software Development West in the Moscone Center in San Francisco on 1995, which was Valentine's Day, which some people didn't like that we did it that evening because they wanted to be like,
of course,
taking their favorite person or persons out to dinner.
There you go.
But at the same time, we were at this big party that evening in San Francisco with thousands of developers showing them Delphi 1.
There you go.
Yeah.
So was the beta, pre-beta for Delphi 1 known as Delphi 95 only in Europe or in the U.S. as well?
I think it was, I don't know, because internally for me it was App Builder.
Right, sure.
App Builder was the name that was showing up, on the title bar and whatever for some of the early field tests.
Yeah.
And then other places it was Delphi 95. Before it was App Builder, when it was first a research project with Anders and Chuck and everybody, it had a code name Monet.
Oh, that's right.
Right, after the artist, because it was going to be a work of art.
Sure.
And some of the early thoughts, if I remember correctly, were that you wouldn't necessarily need any programming. It was all object-based, and you'd connect everything together and then build your applications. And, of course, there were other systems that tried to do everything visually as well, and you still want to have some, whether it's a script language like in Paradox had PAL and Object PAL, even spreadsheets have sort of little things inside of them, little formulas and loops and if statements and things.
Yeah.
So having the programming language that was there so that you could do customization was also in the cards and came along the way.
Right. I think the class name of the main window was T-App Builder for quite some time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you want to proceed? I've also got the WideOrbit homepage sitting back there in a browser just in case we need to refer to anything.
Oh, okay.
Or not.
I put together a couple of slides here. They actually gave me 47, but I pared it down to 7.
47.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. So I figured I wasn't going to cover the whole thing. So if you go to the next one.
I'm there.
Oh, okay. I don't see it on Jim's yet. It'll come over.
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, he's paused screen sharing. Okay.
Because I was doing something else. Okay.
So here's a little bit of WideOrbit in numbers. We're the leading provider of media management software. So all that we do is basically about scheduling commercial spots into slots on a schedule, or as known in the broadcast world, as a log for that day. So it's all about the account executive going out and selling inventory or commercial content to advertisers like Home Depot or McDonald's or whoever, or maybe even Embarcadero. And then it gets scheduled onto a log, sent through an automation system, aired, comes back, gets reconciled, billed, and inventories gets, payments gets chased down. There's in between. There's all kinds of reports for inventory reports, revenue reports, and stuff like that, so you can track it. WideOrbit is the second largest seller of ad inventory, software-based. Google is number one. Google has DoubleClick for publishers, for instance, or DFP. Most people probably know it as DoubleClick way back when. And we have integrations to that, so we can serve up digital ad inventory as well on broadcasters' websites and things like that. And given all the broadcasting through TV, radio, cable networks, digital, et cetera, we actually reach the ads that are scheduled through our systems actually reach almost 100% of U.S. households. We've got over 500 employees, 2,900 stations. You see their networks. That's radio stations, TV stations, and cable networks. All in all, over $30 billion of commercial content is managed through the software system. Our revenue grew over 30% last year. 16 plus consecutive quarters of profitability. 85% of our revenue is recurring, which is much thanks to the 5-year no cancel contracts, of course, that we have. And as you can see on the last bullet point, our clients are very, very happy. Less than 0.3% churn. So I think the next one, there we go. This was exciting. For a Super Bowl, we just entered the programmatic space where commercial content, instead of being sold through agencies and advertisers and salespeople and 42 different touch points through the entire thing, making up contracts and everything like that, it's now possible to sell them and buy them through software, which is referred to as programmatic buying and selling. So in this case, we transacted our first programmatic Super Bowl spot. It was an Oreo cookies commercial, Ritz commercial, broadcast on a local station in Erie. And at the tail end, there was about 4 seconds where you can see the partnership between TubeMogul and WideOrbit. So that was pretty cool.
So that can be pinpointed as to like a specific city, or is it a cable system, or?
That was a local station.
Okay.
So I don't know what the reach is, but
how granular can it get? I mean, eventually, I guess if we're watching on a computer something, there may be a way to deliver an ad specifically to my Apple TV, for example, somewhere in the future.
Sure.
Or a certain demographic or whatever.
Right. So there's various levels of ads that are sold. There's national ads, there's local ads, there's network ads, and all kinds of different things. But you can go all the way down to the local station, like the local station down in Santa Cruz, and just have local commercials there for local businesses. But they're going to have some network from whoever they're an affiliate of. They're going to have some network content, and they might have some mid-level content as well. But it's interesting that you mentioned that as well. When it comes to mobile devices and even desktop devices, that you can pinpoint to who you are, where you are, et cetera, et cetera. You could theoretically target directly to David I. Based on what his Amazon cookies and Google cookies and all kinds of other stuff says, and whatever else is known about that device or that user.
I'm just thinking there might be lots of possibilities to be able to target advertising to your own boss.
There you go. Nice.
Give me a raise.
That's right. I could buy buy ads to target just my boss. I wonder what
my children in ragged clothes. So go ahead, Anders. I'm sorry, because I know you have a certain amount of time. But
sure. It's actually your schedule we're going on. So
okay. Oh, great. Then we're not going to stop till 6 p.m. We're going to deep dive into
So, like I said, our main one of our core products, W Traffic, is or Wide Orbit Traffic, is completely written in Delphi. There's some integrations that are using JavaScript and other kinds of tools as well, of course. But here you can see just a few things that are that the system does. So I mentioned scheduling, and traffic is actually coming from the word traffic department. It has nothing to do with highway traffic.
Oh, it's not car traffic.
It's trafficking of commercials. So each broadcaster will have a traffic person that actually schedules and massages the log. Traditionally, they might have been paper-based. Actually, there are some local small stations that don't have much money that actually have a DJ, and he will manually play commercials or do so-called live reads and read the commercials as well. But we, our systems automate all that, and then we have the automation system for radio, for instance, that will automate it even more and actually run the radio station for you, if you will. So we manage all these things: scheduling, traffic, airtime, sales, order entry, contract management, Salesforce automation, and stuff like that. Pricing automations. A big part of it is actually also optimizing the value of the log for every day, so that you get, obviously throughout the day, you have different day parts and stuff like that. So you have different prices, different rates for different spots, whether it's
drive time, for
whether
example,
it's
for
AM
radio.
drive, PM drive in radio terms, or prime time for TV, or if you're selling in TV or cable, you might be selling to a particular program. So for The Voice, for instance, or for Super Bowl, those rates are going to be through the roof, right, compared to other rates. So you can. It traditionally was manually massaged and edited and optimized, but you can do all kinds of optimization over longer periods of time using our placer engine that will automatically figure out the best placement.
So the screen we're looking at here, and maybe you'll go deeper. I haven't seen some of the other 67 slides that you have. Just kidding.
I think there's two more.
That's a Delphi form. Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah.
Something like that?
So W Traffic has just over 1,000 forms in it.
VCL.
Yes.
Okay.
Windows application. Over 5 million lines of Delphi code on the client side, and many more millions on multiple app servers on the back end. Almost everything written in Delphi. The placer engine is actually written in C++.
So when the customer, I guess, which may be the traffic person at a radio station or a TV network or wherever, they have this on a local machine, but are they connected to WideOrbit on the back end, or do they have a whole turnkey system that's deployed?
So that we
or does it depend?
we do it multiple different ways. Some stations can be self-hosted, so they have their database and all their clients locally. We can host them in our WideOrbit cloud. So that means that we're responsible for the backups and management of their databases and app server cluster. But they still will have typically their clients locally. Some people use Citrix or other ways of remoting into the actual client system as well. But I think overall most people have the client locally on their desktops. And the third way would be to be hosted through a third-party vendor. So you're hosted through IBM or somewhere else, and then they're responsible for that, and you have your clients and things like that. So these are most of the other products listed on here as well. So media sales for proposals and stuff like that, CRM system, a promo system, W Mobile is a little bit of, if you've seen the SMS campaigns and stuff like that, that local stations will run, vote for this, vote for that, give us feedback on different things. So you shoot them a message on a short code, and they send back a questionnaire. Could be a survey or whatever it might be, or a contest or something like that. I mentioned traffic and network. There's program for program management, analytics for reporting, getting all the data visualized. Central and Amphibia is one of our acquisitions. On the left-hand side, it says WO Traffic Internet Orders, if I can see it correctly. That's all the digital stuff as well, and the double-click for publishers, the DFP integration fits in there, the Google Ad Server, and also a smaller acquisition that we did last year as well, Abacast, which is for streaming for radio right now. You can actually get WideOrbit stuff on your iPhone and play content through custom players. You can listen to radio that's that where the commercials are trafficked using WideOrbit traffic and play through the Abacast player. So pretty cool stuff. So
you said 1,000 forms or more than 1,000 forms?
Yeah. Last time I looked, it was just over 1,000 forms, I think.
And they're not all.
And those are just the ones that are there at runtime. I actually quickly ported VCL Scanner, so they may not, that number may not include stuff that's created at runtime.
Okay. But there isn't. If I go to the main source code, there isn't 1,000 auto create forms in the main. Create forms. I mean, there's available forms and create forms, and you can dynamically create forms in code. Or I don't know if you load form descriptors from databases and then create them on the fly as needed, or all the above.
Combination of all of the above, I would say, if you look all across the application.
No, I remember I visited a customer of ours in India a few years back, and I saw all these people when I walked in, and there was like an ocean of people on keyboards, and I thought, wow, that's a lot of programmers. And they said, oh, no, they're doing data entry, like thousands. It's amazing. Oh. And I went in, and they said, no, come meet the developers in a conference room. There's about 30 developers, and what their business did is they did keyboarding data entry for companies that had paper invoices and other things that wanted to computerize them. So what the developers did is they would get the layout of the paper invoice, whatever it was, restaurant receipts, whatever, orders, and so on. And they would build a Delphi form for each one of them.
Okay.
And then they would get from the customer scanned paper that matched visually that form, and they would lay the form over and then side by side. And so you would go through the Delphi form fields looking at the scanned document, and there were several people doing the same thing, and then it would compare for mistakes.
Wow.
And they had thousands. I mean, for every different kind of business you could imagine on the planet, they were doing keyboarding for. They had thousands and thousands of forms. They had all these descriptors for forms in a database so that depending on the customer, they'd load up, because there's certain standard type forms that everybody uses, whether it's an order invoice form, but then there's a bunch of custom ones as well. Yeah. And then I said, oh, okay. And it was a great group of people. So, I mean, having that many forms, how do you keep
the normal user's not going to, they're not going to use 1,000 forms.
Okay.
There's tons of different functional areas in the application. The account executive is going to go to his little task. He's going to have a bunch of tabs in his form, and they may consist of a number of frames. So maybe forms is incorrect. There's a bunch of frames as well that's making up each form. So, like I said, it just goes back to what VCL Scanner told me. So I might be incorrect. I didn't actually go through and count the number of instances of T-form descendants. But anyway, so the account executive is going to do take an order. He's going to put it in. It's going to go to a sales manager for approval, and then so he has his task. Then there's order search screens, reports, and stuff like that. You're going to have the traffic person that actually uses a couple of different log windows to schedule the commercial content in the breaks between the programs, and they might run some inventory reports and some other reports as well for their needs. And then you're going to have log finalization, send it over, create playlists, go to the automation system. Your broadcast day actually happens. The automation system takes over, airs programs and commercials, and then it comes back and gets reconciled. Somebody reconciles, and it gets invoiced. So you generate invoices and statements, and you look at payments and stuff like that. So those are, finance functions. And so there's all different kinds of people that will touch the same client application, but hardly anybody will actually touch the entire application.
So for the developers, do you have separate designers or developers for the forms versus business logic or back-end systems, or do developers also lay forms out for the applications?
Developers will create forms, absolutely. The way new things are created is very much client request driven. So when part of negotiating with a new client might be they need new integrations, they need new functionality, they need some new fields here and there. They might need custom changes to some form somewhere, some functionality somewhere. And once negotiated and stuff like that, it becomes custom development for that client and then delivered.
Mm-hmm. How does your team keep track of all this? It's all in change management.
Yeah, sure. All in Subversion and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
I will add, though, having worked at WideOrbit, there's a lot of really smart people there. That's what helped keep track of it all.
That's true. That's true.
I was humbled and impressed by some of the coworkers I got to work with there.
Yeah. Let me go to the next. Okay. We're hiring, and then we can talk some more, maybe architecture and so on, and versioning and such. Yeah.
So yes, we are indeed hiring. You might have seen that on my blog a couple times. So right now we have software positions open. There's a Delphi position for our media sales product in Birmingham, Alabama. There is a senior integrations engineer position open in San Francisco. That might be Delphi, JavaScript, on a combination of multiple different things. I have not looked into the particular details of that particular rec, but if you know anybody that loves integrating between different applications, let me know. There is a Delphi position open for WO Network. That can be in New York, in Linwood, or Seattle, or even telecommute in this case. So if you have telecommuted in the past and you're really good at managing your time and projects and stuff like that, feel free to apply for that one as well. Software developer for .NET, we're hiring in San Francisco as well. And of course, development support engineer in San Francisco as well. And development support to us is someone that is very familiar with T-SQL, can take a customer database and debug problems using SQL and go through the database, find out what went wrong, and possibly also go in and debug and figure out where in the code in Delphi it happens if they happen to have Delphi knowledge, and help the dev team out as well. So if you know anybody that, or if you're interested, let me know. I think I put my email address on the last slide, probably.
I will comment. You have one of the benefits you have is sabbaticals there.
Yeah, we do have sabbaticals,
and that was pretty cool. I was impressed with that when I was working there. Unfortunately, I wasn't there long enough to get a sabbatical. It's like every 5 years or something like that, isn't it?
It's every 4 years or every 5 years, depending on what you want to do. So 4 years, 4 weeks every 4 years, or 5 weeks every 5 years, depending on what you want to do. Of course, the health benefits, 401k. The management team is very stable. A lot of people have been there since the beginning. My boss has been there since the beginning, and the CEO and founder has been there since the beginning. So that to me is very impressive that the senior management team has been there for a very long time.
So as you know, in these online events we do, there's a mix of people from different parts of the world, especially in the morning. That there might be people from Europe. So when you say telecommute here, is this still telecommute U.S., Canada,
So we are
Western Hemisphere?
Not sure about Canada, but we do say that right now it's U.S. So you have to be a citizen, have a green card, or at least a visa, H-1B type visa that can be transferred, or maybe a TN for Canada, stuff like that. We don't have the infrastructure or support to be able to actually go through the green card application process or visa process from the get-go yet.
So I put up the last slide. There's Anders'
There's my email address.
Yeah.
You can find me on Twitter on suited_aces. That was a poker thing way back when.
Okay. Because you also do archery.
I do archery as well.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun. Yeah, I've been doing archery for almost 5 years, I think.
Yeah.
The kids love it too.
So in the development process, database backend,
SQL Server,
Okay.
Microsoft SQL Server,
then connection from Delphi to SQL servers using
ADO actually.
so DB Go for ADO?
Not really.
Okay. So your own thing.
Right. And we use actually, let's see, what do we use? 20 plus third-party libraries.
Okay.
DevExpress is huge with all
Okay.
the grids and stuff like that, of course. And middle tier stuff. Actually, if you remember Asta,
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
I
Sure.
think it was a heavily modified version of Asta.
heavily modified version of
Because
Asta, yes.
I'd previously worked with Asta, and I got there, I was like, this
We
is a
do
little different.
maintain
than
all the source code for all the third-party tools that we use, so that we can move quickly and fix issues and stuff like that.
So Thomas is saying Anders' iOS deployment video got me through a very long night of trying to deploy my first app to the App Store a couple of years ago.
All right. All
Yep.
right.
I remember that. Yep. That might have been during the mobile. We did the mobile conference, I think, one time. We did a CodeRage Mobile. I think it was during that one. Yeah. Robert Love is saying we dynamically load packages and frames based off user security. So if a person does not have access to a given area of the application, it's not even loaded into memory. They currently have approximately 650 forms. Robert,
Sure.
at the, as you know,
Oh,
state of
600,
Utah.
yeah,
Yeah,
sure,
Robert Love.
yeah.
Yeah, state of Utah.
How's it going, Robert?
It's interesting to hear that others are doing similar
Yeah,
things. So was there?
I saw a picture of Robert and
his team.
Phil and his team. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was cool.
So do you have the same idea where some forms you have
Yeah,
authorized
so we
access
we
and so on?
have tons of security user settings and functions where almost everything is license controlled. Depending on what the client needs, we're going to sell them bits and pieces as add-ons to the core product. And it's all controlled. Like, for instance, the account executive will rarely ever have rights to actually approve the order. That's a sales manager's job. And then importing it back or reconciling or generating invoices, that's another thing. That's, you got to isolate those different things. Because we are, WideOrbit Traffic and WideOrbit Network are the de facto system of record for the broadcasters. And it has to withstand audits. It has to be SOX compliant and all that kind of stuff.
So do your developers document? Do they put comments in the code? Do they write documents, or is there a technical writing team
There's a technical writing team
for the products themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about for engineering documentation?
Could be better, maybe.
Okay.
Yes and no.
UML modeling? No. No. UML diagrams saved in bitmaps? No. So here's a question from Mike. You have so many different products. Maybe you're using different versions of Delphi? in mixing and
yes,
matching?
we are. WideOrbit traffic is on XE7, so the latest and greatest. I forget what network is, but it's on an older version. It might be XE or XE4. I forget exactly, but it also depends what version. So we have a lot of different versions of our products in the field. So we actually use XE7, XE4, and XE if we go back through all of our versions that are more or less currently supported.
Is Unicode a deal? Does WideOrbit have customers outside the U.S.?
Unicode was a major transition that was done a number of years ago.
Yeah, so they could
So we have
sell to
in addition
Japan
to
customers. Or,
in addition to the products, we have different international versions.
Okay.
There's a satellite version of W traffic. There's an international version of W traffic used in Australia and other countries around the world as well.
let's see, Thomas is saying I've been using and he has in double quotes, heavily modified version of Asta for years as well.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So Thomas, I don't know, wherever you're located, anyway, for that previous slide.
I can't see the screen. Is it Thomas Pfister?
No, Marchione.
Okay.
I'm pronouncing that wrong. I'm sure Thomas. I'm trying to think. If you have other questions, I'm always intrigued about the use of the technology, in Delphi and so on. As you said, using a bunch of third-party components, you're using a lot of Delphi frames, forms, probably every kind of runtime library function that you can imagine, every statement type. Is there anything in the language that you don't, Delphi language, that you don't use or don't allow your developers to use? Can't use generics, can't use anonymous methods, no pointers, no pointers.
To my knowledge, we're not using the new parallel stuff.
Okay.
Some people might be playing with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool.
I just signed up for the beta, but we can't talk. Well, I can't say that, can I?
No, that's okay, because JT on the 64-bit iOS, for example, says we're beta testing that part as well.
Yeah.
Anything with FireMonkey yet? Looking at, thinking about for mobile
we're playing with it here
OS
and there.
10 or
for FireMonkey, we're playing with mobile, trying to see what can be done there.
Mm-hmm. Or do people want Macs?
As you can probably imagine, it's a huge, massive application. So our typical mobile application would be, mobile order entry or mobile report running or some other mobile aspect of the application. The entire thing in one piece will probably never realistically be mobile.
Mm-hmm. For reporting for your customers, do you use a report package?
Yeah.
Care to say what it is? No,
I use a report builder.
Report builder. Excellent. Yep. Let's see. Thomas asking, is WideOrbit using DataSnap or any other multi-tier besides Asta?
I believe that the media sales folks are using DataSnap a little bit.
Okay. And then REST services, web services, SOAP servers?
All of the above.
All the above.
Yeah, SOAP interfaces and REST interfaces to a lot of integrations. Some integrations might be file-based. Some integrations in the broadcasting world, there's something called BXF, which is a custom XML format for broadcasting that's being used. What else?
So what about testing, unit testing, automated testing?
A little bit of all of the above. Testing tools. There's a built-in testing harness in the application that we use. Smoke testing, all that kind of stuff. We're trying to do more on all of the above, of course.
And then when it's given to the customers, I guess they, just as we would field test our own products, they do their own testing and field testing before they accept a customized version.
Depending on the size of the client, there will be stages or phases. There could be a QA process by the client, followed by a UAT or user acceptance testing by the client, and then finally a go live at some point. And of course, there's feedback loops through all these processes.
Yep.
Some clients will take the system unmodified But most of the time with larger clients, they do need custom integrations to whatever they have. It could be a automation system for TV. It could be some other third-party integration in the middle that they need an integration to.
So you use Subversion integration in the IDE and externally for, I think you mentioned Subversion.
Everything is in Subversion. All our database scripts and all that kind of stuff. We have a custom DB script updater tool that can upgrade a version of a client database to the next version and stuff like that, and it adds on and deletes and whatever the deltas are.
I think Scott Walsh is going to have to talk to you about DB Change Manager.
There you go.
Which works, and Rapid SQL, which both, all the products on the database side in the Ultimate Edition, Power Studio, NER Studio, they all support SQL Server very nicely. Yeah.
Well, it's a very, very complicated process, a long process to take a large client live, and it's typically, we have an implementation team that will actually install, create the databases, create all their inventory codes, create all of their day parts and everything that they need in order to go live, and then put in historical data, so they have a little bit of historical data orders and stuff like that, and they're going from the past into the future. They run their existing system and our system in parallel for a while, and making sure that everything's working fine, and then at one point in time or another, when they go live, the switch is thrown, and now they're live on traffic.
What do you use for bug tracking?
We use, depending on product, Jira for all newer products. For W traffic, we're using a product we call, it's an in-house modification of Sugar CRM, if I'm not mistaken. And since it's sweeter, we call it Stevia.
Let's see. Mike was asking, why SQL Server instead of Oracle, or is there a choice for customers? It's SQL Server.
It is Microsoft SQL Server. Why would go back to way before my time. We actually picked SQL Server a long, long time ago.
But that's how it's delivered. The customer can't say, I want Oracle, I want MySQL, or whatever. It's turnkey, turnkey for them.
Yeah. That's correct.
I remember when I was there, I had the same question, because I'd done a lot of work on Oracle, more than SQL Server, but there's a lot of stuff that's very much taking advantage of SQL Server there, so it's not like it's...
Yes, we use T-SQL heavily, which is their flavor.
Once you cross that line where you're really leveraging the advanced features of a database, it's really hard to swap it out. So
that's correct.
At that point, you kind of have to pick one and commit.
Yep.
So as you're, I'm going to go.
And even with a large system like that, that's you would have your test metrics would blow out of proportion as well if you have to maintain multiple databases.
I'm going to go back to this slide for a moment to get that plug in again. When you're looking for Delphi developers and then you're interviewing them, what process do they have to go through? Like, you stand them up against a wall and make them stand there for 8 hours, saying they're, talking about code and programming. Do you obviously there's interview processes, there's programming.
So we do a tech screening where we ask you to explain keywords and concepts and things like that in Delphi and SQL, and just make sure that we can take you to the next level. And then we do typically with a developer, we'll do a programming test, which isn't as scary as it sounds, but I've actually had reaction from a lot of people that recognize my name when I'm running the programming test. They're like locking up, but I'm a nice guy. I try to warm him up and give him a low ball thing to start on first, and then usually people warm up and they get through it, so to speak.
So that's your
own. And then of course, in person. Once that's done, it's an in-person thing. Typically, they go through, 3-4 people up in Linwood. They probably do some whiteboarding and stuff like that up there. The typical developer interview, I would say.
Okay. So some testing, they don't. If someone is Delphi certified or master certified using the Embarcadero certification test, is that a good thing?
Sure.
Yeah, you worked on that. So you worked on that test, the certification test stuff. So.
No, that would be great practice. Okay. Absolutely.
Okay. But
and if you're, we don't use too many of the newer things. I would say if you're fully functional in Delphi 7, you can, and of course, add on the Unicode stuff. You can deal with 95% and pick up the rest that we're using. It's not that hard to learn once you have the solid foundation in Delphi 7 to actually jump into XE7. However, the IDEs do look different. The debugger look different. There's lots of different things in XE7. I use XE7 for the programming test, for instance. So if you're thinking about applying, a good thing would be to, if you're not on one of the XE versions, if you're actually using XE7 or, Delphi 7 or Delphi 5 or whatever, to at least download the trial and play with it and get familiar with the latest and greatest concepts and everything like that as well.
Okay, we've been asking other guests. We had Kerry Jensen. He connected in from Costa Rica, and we've had other people. We've been asking Delphi developers, and so you're on the hotspot, the quick hotspot now.
Uh-oh.
What's your favorite Delphi programming language feature?
My favorite Delphi programming. Good question.
Others have shown generics, interfaces, anonymous functions.
Anonymous functions.
Okay.
But I think the parallel stuff is a contender for sure.
Okay.
I did concurrent C++ over 20 years ago, and I love the fact that you can do asynchronous and stuff, and it had asynchronous support in the language. Not that I do too much C++ anymore, but that was really cool.
For me, way back when, Per Brink Hansen, concurrent Pascal.
There you go.
Way back in the day.
Yeah.
Favorite component?
Favorite component.
Besides T Smiley.
Oh, I was going to say T1 and Smiley, but that's an internal joke.
Yeah, that was it. We covered that. Yeah, we covered multi-Smiley with Nick, and I said he couldn't say T Smiley either because we knew that would be his favorite component.
I would have to say it's the DB Express grids, probably based on how much we use them.
Yeah, Dev Express. Yeah, they have grids galore. Quantum grid, pivot grid, on and on. Yeah. And then what? RTL. I guess for the parallel programming, you could say the parallel programming parts, but do you have another favorite RTL? Some people said the conversion unit. IOUtils is a pretty good one if you do a lot of file operations, I suppose.
Right. Yeah.
Alexander.
Actually, one third-party set of tools that I like a lot is Eureka Log as well.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty crucial to us when we get an issue reported by a client that we get that Eureka Log and all of its different parts in it to help us track down an issue.
Yeah, the Eureka Log and Mat Accept, if you really need to be using one of those too.
Right.
I think, especially if you're deploying outside your network.
Right. Because otherwise you're just going to get an access violation at some address and at some build, you got to track it down.
So we're going to move on in a moment, but if you have other questions about Delphi or WideOrbit or programming that you want to put in the Q&A log while we have Anders here, you can do that. I'm going to bring up, let's see, what am I doing over here? I'm clicking on all these different buttons. Not that, and okay. So that's just if you want to see more about WideOrbit, go to wideorbit.com, www.wideorbit.com.
Sure. Yeah.
Introducing the world's first programmatic marketplace for broadcast ads. Oh, it's all those banners that go by.
Yeah.
Over 100,000 radio stations. Wow, 100. I'm sorry, not 100,000. 1,000 radio stations. 100,000. I bet. Wide Orbit User Conference.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's actually a really cool event because
Yeah.
they want the developers to go out and meet the end users.
Yeah.
Oh, neat. Is it use sessions? Not program. It's not a developer conference. It's how to use the products and to the maximum.
Yeah, it's actually very much like a BoreCon, if you will, where you have what's new in this version, or what's new in the latest version of different products. You have specific. You're drilling into specific new functionality in specific tracks. There might be vendor sessions, of course, keynotes and stuff like that. But it's not developer focused. It's end user focused. So there will be radio tracks, TV track, network track, digital track, programmatic track, those kind of things. I'll be there in San Diego in mid June.
I remember when I attended as a developer, it's exciting when during the keynote when they're announcing new features and they announce a feature you worked on and everybody applauds. And you're
Right.
like, woo, I did that.
Yeah.
Well,
that's pretty good that the developers get to see the customers and also hear what questions or problems they might talk about and issues, and you could be thinking, sitting in the audience, going like, "Oh yeah, I could add that. That's just 2 lines of code in that one module somewhere." Yeah.
No, I remember we've typically run them every other year, and my first one was I think 2 weeks after I started a year and a half ago.
Oh, wow.
And it was an awesome opportunity to get my feet wet immediately as far as what broadcasters and what the clients needed and what it was all about. It was pretty cool.
So do the customer requests come in as user stories in Jira, or those are through your sales team, or how does it end up getting to the develop? I guess product managers decide whether a feature is getting.
It could be user stories in Jira. It could be requirements documents, DRDs, and stuff like that that are attached to Salesforce cases or in
or a contract or
in our Stevia bug tracking system as well.
So. Do you have product managers like we have here that own the products and push the R&D teams to get features in? Or?
So I work very closely with the WO Traffic product manager. Mm-hmm. I have a very good business analyst that works for me for radio. I have a couple of developers and a QA guy. All the product people work together. Developers will have to get input from product and business analysts a lot of the time because there just has to be that feedback. What exactly is it that you're looking for? The developer will, put together something, and but then there's very detailed questions about, well, how do you really want this thing to work? And, where it's not necessarily all spec'd out to begin with.
And it's a different world, right, in the sense that the Delphi developers you have have never worked at a radio station or sold ads on a radio or television station network.
Right, very, very few.
Versus here, we're developers, right? We've been programmers, we have degrees in computer science and so on.
Right.
So, and we're building developer tools that have programming language. So there's an affinity. At the same time, we still have to get input from our customers of how they want to do things and they need features. Yeah.
So that's one thing that our developers not required to know the business to begin with. They will learn the business, or at least the parts of the business that they need to learn on the job. That's what we have the business folks that know all that stuff. The product managers and the business analysts, et cetera, are typically from, I would say all of them are from the broadcasting industry from somewhere, from different networks, from different stations and broadcasters.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. I love hearing about what developers are building with Delphi. I mean, we've had Lars Dibdal, am I pronouncing that right? From Denmark, which is this critical care patient systems for intensive care units of hospitals and so on, all in Delphi and some of the other folks we've talked with.
Danish is a little bit different than Swedish, but it might be Dybdahl.
Okay. Yeah, I just go and speak if and case and
There you go.
read-ln, write-ln, and t-object.
Delphi and Delphi.
Yeah, Delphi. That was it. That was the survey going on. I'm sure Delphi won. I'm sure.
I checked again this morning. Delphi is still in the lead.
Cool.
Although there's still some strong arguments for the other way.
Right.
Yeah. So that many lines of code. Okay. I don't know, Jim, or anybody else, if you have other questions. I mean, I could go on forever asking about, architecture and implementation and all of that. But one of the things we're trying to do, we're working with WideOrbit and Anders to do a deeper technical kind of webinar about the use again of Delphi in the products. This was just a great opportunity during Delphi Week, and Anders was close by to have him come in. So we're trying to work on something maybe for March as a RAD in action success story case study webinar with some more technology bits, and also about the business and code and so on.
Yep.
Maybe how deep you let inheritance go, for example, and other kinds of things. I don't know if you run audits and metrics or static analyzers or other things to see if programmers are doing bad stuff. Well, we don't care about case sensitivity in Delphi, but it's always nice if variables are named nicely, and there's all the metrics and audits that are there to track down things. Yeah.
Well, while we're talking about third parties, we could not live without Beyond Compare.
Got it. Okay.
Beyond Compare is crucial to our code reviews and all that kind of stuff.
Do you have Castalia's plugin? Is that plugged into the IDE, Castalia for Delphi, for the editor? It's a free download for XE7 customers. Okay. Refactoring, people refactor till the cows. Yeah, Beyond Compare.
Yeah, Beyond Compare.
Well, okay, Anders, thank you so much for stopping by. As always, it's great to see you, and then I get to see you and Jim in the same room too, which is kind of a surreal thing, because when Anders was working with me here at Embarcadero, then Jim was there, but Jim also was elsewhere in the Delphi community. And we'd see each other, or you'd see him. You did Boise stops and Seattle stops, and of course we've been all over the world.
So speaking of Castalia, you guys bought them, right?
We did, yeah. So Castalia will be integrated.
Is Jacob here?
No, he's still working, but he's working. He's working for us, and he's working on next generation of Castalia, and he's adding the C++ version. But this is Delphi Week, so
cool.
I have to watch out for. But it'll be in Castalia's being integrated into the IDE when it's released.
Oh, nice.
In the future. Right now, you just go to Code Central and download it if you have XE7 and plug it in. The other product that you might be interested in looking at is that he has his Usertility, which is an SDK and a backend server for tracking what's going on inside the applications, what APIs are being called, what objects are being used, what functionality of an application are being used by users of the application.
Sure.
So that you can see and track the use of application by the users and customers. Mm-hmm. So Usertility is the other piece that we acquired. And that's some work is still going on with Usertility, so everybody can stay tuned for how you integrate through an SDK for doing tracking of the use of different parts of the products from your users out there.
Very cool.
So then you could see, hey, nobody's using that feature anymore. Why do we have that there?
There you go.
Or if some problem happens, it can report in different things as well. And people can go out to just search for Usertility and 2Desk software. I think the information still may be, the site's still up. And there was even documentation about the SDK, but we're going to make sure that on the development side, that's all integrated very nicely. And then there's a server component that collects all the analytics of the use of SDKs, APIs, and so on, versus the analytics you probably track of the users and using the product in the accounting and all of that. Sure. You can integrate analytics tracking right inside the software in a very nice, simple SDK way.
Yep.
With Usertility. And Thomas just says, count me as Delphi. Thank you, instead of Delphi. There's one more vote for some of us U.S. guys. Oh, well. That's okay. I switch all the time. And you're from
Well,
Sweden
I
originally,
switched,
so
I switched shortly after I moved.
yeah, there we go. Yeah.
I think Steve Teixeira was. No, I'm not going to say that he beat it out of me, but
Yeah, these are fighting pronunciations.
yeah. No, Steve Teixeira. It's very interesting. He actually got me on board. He referred me, and I started in support in '96 for Borland.
Yeah.
And Steve went from support to R&D, and now he's doing Microsoft stuff. I think he's doing Internet of Things.
He's doing the Internet of Things, yeah.
He was doing C++ for a long time.
He's the Internet of Things, and we're doing some work with Microsoft because of the Galileo board and the Edison board from Intel, and now Microsoft announced for the Raspberry Pi 2 with 1 gigabyte, they're going to have Windows 10.
Yep.
Parts of Windows 10 on the Raspberry Pi 2. So we had Alan Bauer the other day, and his Raspberry Pi was on order, and then he told us, I think yesterday, that it's been shipped, and now he's just waiting for it to arrive. And then he'll have to wait for us to get some betas of the Raspberry Pi version of Windows 10. That'll be really cool. Yeah. T-Rex, I made these nicknames. There was Steve Trefethen, he was T-Ref, and Steve Teixeira was T-Rex. And it goes back to T-Rof, T-Ron, and, these things with text editing systems from publishing from years ago. So it was from that world of my deeper past, way off in the distance. But yeah, T-Rex, Teixeira became T-Rex to me because Teixeira was just too much. T-Rex, T-Ref, that was good.
There you go.
Well, Anders, thank you very much for coming by.
Thank you very much for having me, and keep it up.
Yeah, and then we'll keep everybody posted as we can figure out with Anders and WideOrbit on a Rad in Action webinar sometime. We hope to schedule it in March, but we'll let everybody know. I mean,
and of course, happy birthday, Delphi, tomorrow.
Tomorrow, absolutely. Yes. Yep. Okay, everyone, take care, Anders, and everyone, just a quick moment break. Actually, I'll turn it over to Jim, I think, because you know the agenda of what we're doing in this morning session of Delphi Week, I think.
Actually, I was going to do that video I just uploaded for you.
Okay. Let me...
Let's do that now.
Let me just stop for a moment and figure out where all that is. Let me go back one last time while he's here and put that's Anders' email address.
Yep.
So if
Ohlsson at WideOrbit.com.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. If you are interested in the openings they have, let me go one last time. They're looking for developers in Birmingham, Alabama, San Francisco, New York, Seattle, for that one there with WO Network or Telecommute.
And Seattle's in Linwood, right?
Yes.
Which is actually a really nice
It's like a suburb of Seattle. Right?
Yeah.
It's so far north.
It rains less in Linwood than it does in Seattle. So if rain's an issue for you, Linwood's
There you
actually
go.
not
It's
that
in a
bad.
rain shadow.
Yeah. I lived there for a while, just outside Linwood. It was just beautiful.
So, Anders, no openings on the Big Island of Hawaii?
Well, I'll
Telecommute?
be the one taking that one.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Oh, darn. So, anybody need a Delphi programmer on the Big Island of Hawaii, please send an email to david@embarcadero.com.
There you go. Nice.